In this video, we're going to talk about how to find systematic reviews by searching the library databases. If you are still a little bit unclear on what a systematic review is, then I would encourage you to check out the previous video on what a systematic review is. It helps to know exactly what you're looking for before you dive into the search. Also, if you feel like you need a little bit of a refresher on how to use these databases and how to set up a search, then I'd suggest that you go back to the Getting Started video on how to search library databases, because that will give you the foundation that you need. And we're going to jump right into searching. So I'm in CINAHL Complete right now. I'm going to go in and add Academic Search Complete and MEDLINE as we usually do. And let's say that I'm interested in finding systematic reviews on self-management techniques for people with diabetes. So when I'm searching for systematic reviews, I usually start with just one or two concepts from my PICO question. Even though I might have a more specific idea of what I ideally would like to find, I start with just one or two things, and then if I'm getting lots of results, I can narrow down. So I'm going to start with diabetes and self-management. And then when you're searching for systematic reviews, you can just put systematic review right on the third line. And that's because, as we discussed in the previous video, systematic reviews will usually use the word systematic review right in the title. You can see we get a good number of search results. So I'm going to come over and adjust the publication date, so we're looking within the last 5 years or so. And we still have a good number of results. So if you have fewer than 50 or 100 results, it might be easier for you to just scroll through the titles, see what you have, and see if anything stands out to you as being particularly relevant to what you are looking for. But if you have more than 100 or so results, then you can try adding more concepts to your search, so you can try to narrow down and get even closer to what it is that you were originally looking for. So let's say that in this case, I'm particularly interested in technological interventions. So I'm going to put in technology. Then mHealth is another term that I've seen used, talking about mobile health or technological intervention. So I'm going to put that in and see if it brings anything up. And I'm just going to hit search again. And remember, anytime that you're adding more concepts here, you're narrowing down, you're getting even closer to what your ideal topic is. So the number of results is going to be getting smaller, but hopefully you will be getting closer to what you're looking for. So now that we have fewer than 100, I'm not going to try to add more terms because there might be something really great in here and I might miss it if I just don't use the correct term. So I'm going to scroll through. This one here says that it's an overview of systematic reviews. So apparently a lot of systematic reviews have been done on this topic, enough that a researcher looked at all of the systematic reviews and provided an overview. So it's almost like a meta systematic review. So that might be really interesting to look at in a different case, but it's not going to work for this assignment because you're looking for a traditional systematic review. And then you can see these other options here tell you that they're a systematic review of whatever it is. Okay. And smartphone applications, that sounds interesting. Tells me that it's a systematic review and meta-analysis. So I am going to open the full text and take a look. So again, it will usually tell you right in the title that you're looking at a systematic review and whether or not a meta-analysis is included. But you also want to double check the methods to make sure that it actually is a systematic review. So we can scroll right down to the methods section. And you want to look and make sure that it's telling you exactly how they search for the articles that they included in the study, how they decided which results they were going to use in their study, how they decided which studies were outside of the scope. So we can see it tells us what databases they searched, some mesh terms and keywords that they used. And then this seems pretty brief to me. Usually you'll see a little bit more detail, but it does say that they include the more detailed search strategy in a table. So if I were going to use this one for my assignment, I could look at that table and find more information to analyze. And then they describe the inclusion and exclusion criteria that they use to decide which studies were going to be included in the review, which ones were outside the scope. They tell us exactly how they pulled the data from the studies, how they assessed the quality, all of that. So these are all things that we're looking for in a systematic review. There's a table right here that shows us all of the studies that they included and breaks it down by different factors, which helps them compare. And then you can see in the results, it will tell us what they found. And here is that flow chart that you will often see with systematic reviews, telling us how many results they got initially, and then how they got down to the number of results that they ended up including. So this one is a little bit brief in the methodology section, but it does include some information later on that I could take a look at. So I think that this one definitely qualifies as a systematic review. It could be a good candidate to use for this assignment, but you always want to send it to your professor and just verify, because they might notice something that you haven't noticed that would make it difficult to use a particular review. So once you've found one systematic review, then you need to go back to your search results and try to find a second one. And sometimes you'll be able to find more than one right away. On some topics, maybe there just haven't been quite as many systematic reviews done recently, and that's okay. One thing to keep in mind is that you probably won't find two systematic reviews that are on exactly the same topic, because systematic reviews take a lot of time and work to go through. Sometimes it takes researchers years to put these together. So they'll actually go through before they start one and see if anybody has done a systematic review recently. And if somebody's just done it, they're not going to replicate it unless they have a really good reason. So as long as you find two that are on the same general topic, that should be fine for this assignment. You don't have to find two that are exactly the same, because you're actually unlikely to be able to find that. And if you're unsure about what would be close enough, if you're looking at a couple of different articles, your professor would probably be the best person to talk to, because they're going to be able to tell you what would be close enough that you can compare, and what might be a little bit too different would make it difficult for you to compare. If you're having a really hard time, don't spend too much time searching on your own, because that can get really frustrating. You can always reach out to the library. You can call the reference desk, or you can email me to make an appointment. We're more than happy to help you. And if you are having trouble getting to the full text of an article that you think might work for you, you can check out the Getting Started video in this series on finding the full text. And you can always contact the library for help with that too.